Alright, so we've set up our materials, we've explained what materials and textures are, we've got everything ready, right? And we've done some quick importing into Unity, or we've seen it in Unity. Let's take a look at the last few things you need to do, especially in a production setting. You want to make sure that everything you do is fast and efficient. So what we're going to do is move all of our textures over to wherever I put them in Unity, and to the folder in Unity, which is over here. It's in the Unity props textures. I want to make sure all my textures are in there, not my authoring textures. If I want to build it out, I can just copy them in there and all that stuff. But I want to make sure that the final ones I'm going to be using on this crate, even if I change them, just changes inside of Unity. That way I don't have to copy import. I can just overwrite the old textures, and I'll show you what I mean. But let me do one more. I've done them all but the rubber texture right now. So I've shown you before that you can come in here and do all this, but you can also just work inside of this object here. Once you select it, you see all these materials show up, or these textures show up. So all I have to do is click on it, and say I want to go to the proper place. So we'll just go to the props textures, and then I'm going to say, which one is this? This is the normal, so I'm going to come over to, in this case, the rubber normal, which actually is the same as the decal normal, so we're going to say okay there. And then I'm going to go back and click on it again, and it pulls me back out. And then I go to the rubber albedo. In this case, it's the rubber texture, but we'll just use the same term, make sure we are in the same place. We want to use the rubber decal base as the texture I'm going to use now. It's the same color and everything. But yes, I'm actually working inside of Max with the textures inside of where they're going to live in Unity. This is something that's key and fast for you to work with. And then there's a couple more things I'm going to show when we get them in there. Everything else, the trim and smoothness need to be different. So if I come over here, I go back to this, I come to the rubber decal metal and all that. I'm going to leave them the way they are because inside of Unity we're going to use this mask map. You'll see that the mask map. I did leave this one in here just for, I'm not exactly sure actually, but these other ones you'll see all these textures have mask maps for them because I'll talk to you about that when we get into there. That's what Unity uses as we talked about splitting them into masks. So I mean every one of these things has their materials, including this base, rough, smooth, but these again are inside, won't be used inside of Unity, so I'm just going to focus on using the mask maps. Okay, so everything's in Unity. They should be all linked up. I made sure the names made sense. Inner crate base, inner crate base, crate base, and this is crate color. This is inner crate base. This is metal decal trim 1. Now decal trim is the term I'm using for this, and I'm using metal because this is the metal option, and then this is the rubber decal trim 1. And the reason I'm calling it trim 1 is because if I want to make 20 of these trims, I need to have a way to identify them. So it's, you know, I can use these trims any way I want all the time. All right, so I have that. I'm going to export this. I'm going to export it to Unity. I guess I can do this drop down here. I'm going to go into the props folder, not to the materials folder. I'm going to call this tech crate for now. I probably should just call it crate. Something that's the same name, but we'll just call it tech crate. Let's say okay. Okay. And then we're going to come back into Unity. And you can see I've already deleted everything, but now that I've pushed everything in there, I haven't opened Unity since I did that. But now everything that I did is inside of Unity. All these textures are there, and the new box that I just exported is sitting right there. Okay, so this looks great. It's starting to feel like there's something going on, but we can tell if we right click on this that there's a lot of going on that's wrong, especially with the metal and stuff. So part of that is because the way that Unity default imports things is it embeds it says embeds materials, and it says import via material description, and then down here it doesn't change, but we don't really want it to do that. I know there's a perfectly good reason people use it this way, but I'm used to the other way, and I like to bring my stuff in ready to go, maybe a couple of little hookups and I'm done. So I'm going to change this from embedded to external materials, and I'm going to change this material to a standard. material, which is the standard material, so at least it looks like it's correct. And then I'm going to change it so it goes by base texture name. No, because I don't want it to name the material based off of the first texture or the simple texture, especially if I don't have one. I want to base it off the model material name. So whatever I named it in Max, it's now going to name the materials there. If we look inside of here, we will see that there's no materials in there right now. I can double click, let me cancel, I'll just double click and show you. And there's these materials in here, right? But these are old materials, so we're just gonna go ahead and delete them. This, we'll come back out to props, look at that tech crate, it's still got the textures on it. Everything's actually embedded, the materials are in here. So I'm gonna come back up here again and say external, I'm gonna say standard, and then I'm gonna click on by model's name, and then I'm gonna apply. And what that does for me automatically is it actually adds all the materials into this place right here. The problem with this one right here is because I have that extra material. If you remember in, let me come back up here, in Max, and for the materials, we'll see I have this fifth one that I was using for glass, and I just didn't name it, so it defaults the name. So it's really important you name it, otherwise you get those weird named ones when you bring it into Unity. But the problem is I don't want to have to do this every time. I just want this to be done when I bring it in. So how do I fix that problem? Well, for me, the way I do it is I go back and look at this tech crate, and you'll see all the settings that are saved right there. Then there's this little slider indicator bar up here, this button. If I click on that button, it's going to come up with presets. I don't have any presets that I want to use yet, so I'll just say save current to, and it'll save this current preset. I'm going to name it, I'm going to put it in this props folder, and I'll call this default import, like that, and then it saved it. Now if I look here, now there's this default import. The last thing I need to do is say add FBX to FBX importer, or add to FBX importer default. Bam, like that. Now it's going to be the default thing I do, and to prove it to you, I'm going to delete this. Yep. And I'm going to say in here, I'm going to get rid of all these. I do need to bring in my own textures, so just so you know, these textures that are in here, I brought in. You have to do that. But everything else from now on, when I export straight out of Max to this folder, grab it again, export straight to this folder, props, and we'll call this tech crate. Okay. Okay. And then we look down here, we will see tech crate is now in here, and if I click on it, you'll say, look, shader legacy, default, external legacy, and models material names, and now inside of my materials folder, they're all back. So this makes anytime I import anything in here set up the way I like it. This is the way I like it. And if I click on this, you'll see that it's standard. It doesn't actually use standard because I'm in Unity HDRP. It actually just uses HDRP lit. So even though it says legacy, it sets it to the HDRP lit. Now, there's a couple things that we'll notice in here. That first off, it didn't put a mask map in there because I didn't have it in Max. I didn't have it set up in Max. It didn't put the normal in there, which is interesting. And it didn't put anything, well, that's the only things it didn't put in there. So I'm going to go ahead and drop my crate onto the stage here. Get rid of this for now. And I'm going to look at it, and there's some problems with it, right? So if I go to the materials, if I click on it, we can see these are all the 6 materials I'm using. Remember, 6 materials seems like a lot, but if this 6 materials are spread across hundreds of things, that means they only have to calculate. And this is a lot of the times when you build, you have these things set up. So metal decal trim, I'm going to look at the metal decal trim, and it has no base color, which is correct actually. And then the mask map isn't in here, right? So if we come over to the textures, I can say crate mask map and throw it in there. And now the crate mask map, oops, I think I did the wrong one. Oh, this is the trim. Okay. I don't have a trim mask map. I probably have one, but I don't use it. So I'm going to come down here, look for the crate base, which is the crate material. I'm going to go in here and throw this mask map on it. So now I have this mask map, and if I look around it, you can see it's using the standard create material texture or the map. Now remember, we didn't use that, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes, but we do want to put the normal on here, so we'll put the metal normal right there, just to give a little bit more believability. Then we'll come back to our, close this one right now because we're using the standard. We're going to come up to our crate color, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab the mask map for crates. This one. And then we're going to grab the crate normal. And now we're starting to get things. Which brings me to another topic. When we import textures in here, by default, they are going to be set up as default 2D. You know, when we do our skybox, you saw that. The one thing it used to do is it used to come up if you used a normal and say, this is not set up as normal, do you want to fix it? It doesn't do that anymore. So that means that every time you bring a normal in here, unless they fix something that I haven't seen, I'm just going to grab all my normals at this point. I need to make sure I change this to normal map. If it's not changed to a normal map, it doesn't do what you think. So now if I apply it, now the normals are working correctly. So that's a big thing, that if you didn't have that set up, it wouldn't work correctly. Okay, so I've got my decal set up, I've got my normal set up, I've got my object on here. Let's go back to this, and we'll look for, close that one up. We'll go to middle decal trim. We're gonna go to decal trim normal and throw that into here. Okay, so that's working. We're gonna go to decal trim mask and throw it into here and see how that looks. That looks different than it did before we wanted it to be. We'll talk about that in a minute. And we'll look at the emissive, so we can put that emissive. We have to turn on emissive real quick, so we're gonna go down to emission inputs, and we're gonna say emissive color right there, and use emissive intensity, and then we turn this up to 1,000 or something crazy. I think it actually has to be like 100,000 or something. Let me make sure I have integrate decal. That one's on there now. This one, it needs to be white, so it's going to use the alpha on this, and then we'll go all the way to white for this. There's that. And then we'll come back down to emission and say, there we go. So it's 1,000,000, really high. I mean, there's some things you can change to make it set up differently, but for now, that's working. So that's working, but of course we still have this problem with the alpha. So we'll come back to our object here. And what we need to do in here to make this work is we need to go to surface options, and we need to change this so it's using an alpha clipping. So alpha clipping works, but what it's looking for is alpha clipping on our texture, and we don't have a base map on here. So if we come back to our inner crate base map and we drop it on here, we start to get some kind of information, but then we also have to say alpha to mask. I apparently had the wrong map. I grabbed it wrong. I just pause it real quick to look. Okay, it's this trim base map, and you can see it's got RGB-A, and the alpha is our alpha map. So I'll go back to RGB. I'll go back to the crate. In fact, what I'll do is I'll lock this crate so I don't have to have that dance anymore. And then I'll take this trim, decal trim base map, and I'll throw it in here. And now it's cutting everything out. And you can change the threshold of how much it does. And if I turn this off, it works too. You can do it that way. And also, we're going to use that mask at other points, but this is kind of how you do it. All right, so render past default. We're not going to mess with a bunch of this stuff in here. We'll come back to it. We don't even have to change it to transparent, but now our decals are starting to work. We need to get something metal for our top here, so we're going to grab this one. And what we'll do for now is we'll go to the crate, inner crate base, and we will take the surface inputs here. Oops, not base. Turn that one down. Here we go. Inner crate base, and then we'll take the surface in inner crate base maps. Bam. Okay, and then we're going to use inner crate mask map. We'll try this. Now we're getting to see something that's pretty good. Okay, and then we can do inner crate normal, which we shouldn't have much of a normal, but it's there now. I think it's kind of a broken normal, honestly. Yeah, I'm not sure what I did there, but we'll just take that inner crate normal and throw it on there, because why not? It's probably something I messed up when I exported this originally. Anyway, so I have all these, and then everything should be working. But you'll notice that my metals don't match, and you'll notice that they don't seem like they're from the same pieces. Oh, plus I forgot to use rubber. Rubber's the easier one because it's its own world, so we'll just open up rubber one here, and we'll do the same thing. We have our, we need that decal trim normal into the normal map, so we get that back, and then we're going to come to our rubber decal mask map, throw that in there. And I think that's all we need. So there we go. We got it all set up, right? But it still doesn't feel right. These don't feel like they're the same part of it. Now, there's one of the things I want to point out is that you're never going to get this to look perfect because it's such a flat surface. You'll see when I look at it up here, minus my bugs. But the problem is we're still not using that mask map, that metal map across the whole thing. And that's what we'll do next.